Open my Bible here, get all set up. What did I do with it? Where did I put it this time? Well, where did it go? There it is. See, I'm stuck on duh all the time. All right, where are we going to go first? All right, first we're going to go 2 Peter chapter 3, and if you need to know. But before we get started with that, all right, we're ready now. All right, today, everybody, today is Sunday, December 4th, 2022, and this is my little Bible study. And we're going to continue. We're going to get back on our exploration that we had in the first 8 or so chapters of the book of Genesis. Tonight, we're going to be starting in 2 Peter chapter 3. So if you want to set up and go there first, because 2 Peter chapter 3. We're going to be looking at a few verses here in 2 Peter chapter 3. And this is 2 Peter chapter 3 is one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible because of exactly what it says, right? Tonight I want to get back into the vein that we were in the first two meetings that we had, and where we were talking about how old the earth actually was. So we discovered then through exploration of the book of Job, chapter 38, which we're going back to tonight at one point, that there was an entire age before this one that existed in the earth, and we were all a part of it then, and it was destroyed and wiped out. All right. We just call that the first, second heaven and earth age. And that's where 2 Peter chapter 3 actually picks up. So let's pick it up there. And we're going to be going from here, this idea, into the first day of creation of this age, the first day of creation of this heaven and earth age, the second one. All right. This second epistle, beloved, I now write unto you in both, which I stir up your pure mind by way of remembrance. All right. What he's saying is I want you to sit down and think about something and remember something, all right? That you be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets and by the commandment of us, the apostles of the Lord and Savior. These are the same apostles, or these are the same prophets that we were talking about in the first two meetings that we had about the book of Genesis, where we were in the book of Job, we were in the book of Jeremiah, we were in the book of Genesis. Excuse me, and here in 2 Peter 2 as well. All right. He wants to remind you of those things that the prophets of old talked about this. All right. Knowing this first, verse 3, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lust. All right. That addresses it where it is in time. It's addressed to us, right, in the last days. All right. What are these scoffers saying? And saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep or died, all things continued as they were from the beginning of creation. It's all just creeping along just like it always has. All right. Now, you'll hear this in church. You hear this in the street. You hear it everywhere. People have been talking about the second advent since the first advent. It's just the way it goes down. All right. What are they saying? For this, they willingly are ignorant of. All right. Now, this requires willing ignorance. What are they willingly ignorant of? That by the word of God, the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, that entire heaven and earth age that contained Behemoth and Leviathan and all those things, all right, by the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. Now there's a couple of words I want you to get a grip on here in these first two, in verse 5 and 6. One is word, the other one was perished, all right? Often there's confusion here because they try to point to Noah's flood here. Okay, but it doesn't fly. First of all, the word, all right, in verse 5. Let me just go ahead and turn on my Strongs. All right. That by the word of God, the heavens were of old. This word is logos. All right, and if you studied in John, you'll run into this word before, which we're going to for the nights over again. You're going to understand exactly what it means. All right. Something that's said, including a thought, by implication, a topic, a subject of disclosure, all right? But it means also by reasoning of the mental factor or motive, by extension of computation, all right? Specifically, with the article in John, it is the divine expression that is Christ, okay? That's where I want to stop with that. But we're not in John. We're going to be later right now. Here we're in 2 Peter, all right? So there's no article. You understand what I'm saying? This logos doesn't have an article associated with it, so we don't take it as the divine expression of Christ. All right? That means we have to take it as what it means. All right? It means that you count things with reasoning and computation. All right? Reasoning Isaac Newton supposedly saw an apple fall to the ground, and he said the reason that the apple falls every time is there's a force that we don't understand that attracts it. All right, and here we get the idea of gravity born out of that. He's reasoned. He's had an idea. He had an observation. It's called observational data in science. All right, well, the other type of data is quantitative data, which is numerically driven, which means computative data. All right. So what it's saying is that every way that you can add up, I think about geology, biology, astronomy, all these things, every way that you can reason, we have fault lines moving, we have an expanding, redshifted universe like we've talked about. Everything that you can reason and see, you can come up with one conclusion, is that the heaven and the earth were of old, with the earth standing in the water and out of the water, wherein the world that then was perished. All right? Now let's go back to 2 Peter chapter 3. Pick it up right there. All right, so the word perish now, it means in your Strong's, is to destroy fully. All right? Now you can't be confusing this with Noah's flood, because the whole point of Noah's ark was so that seed would be kept alive on the earth. All right? So this flood that we're talking about is the original destruction, what we're talking about in Jeremiah chapter 4. What we talk about, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. Yep. That's the flood we're talking about here, where the world perished. But the heaven and the earth, which are now, which is what it says next, there, what does it say about them? But the heavens and earth, which are now, in verse 7, by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and the perdition of ungodly men. All right, so that's judgment day. All right, so he's clearly talking about two complete heaven and earth ages. Okay, and then just don't put Noah's flood in there. Noah's flood is a part of the second heaven and earth age. Okay? And we're going to study that very much in depth. All right, but where we're going from right here, but listen to one more verse, because this is part of the days of creation that we're talking about. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. All right, so here we get our time scale then for the book of Genesis, when we start going through the days of creation. Each one of these days that we're going to discuss are 1,000-year periods on earth. All right, and when you start to look at that way, well, things that you see written in the earth with archaeology and the history of man all begin to make much more sense when you start counting that way. The key is not to count the beginning of the world from the first days of creation. That's just the beginning of this age, which is only measured in thousands of years. All right, but the first age was measured in hundreds of thousands of years, and it came to pass that it was destroyed. Okay, now that we got that reiterated and stuck all right back into our mind again about the first heaven and earth age, we're going to talk about the first day of creation in this heaven and earth age, all right? It's not the first, it's not the beginning of everything, it's just the beginning of this heaven and earth age. So run back to Genesis then, chapter 1. Chapter 1, and we're going to actually, one of these days, start making a little more progress actually in the book of Genesis, but we got to lay all this groundwork first, all right? Because without it, it doesn't make sense. The things after it just become this little fairy tale like we've been taught to color in Sunday school, all right? Without this groundwork, we just lost in the rest of the book, because this is the basis for in point of this entire age of flesh, of one of the things that we're talking about here. All right. Now we're actually in verse 3 in our study in Genesis. Now, Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. We're at the first day of creation of this age. Okay, now I want you to remember back the very first lecture where we talked about Jeremiah chapter 4. All right, the very expression above is only used in Jeremiah. Verse 2 is repeated in Jeremiah, and it says, without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep here in Genesis. In Jeremiah says that the earth was without form and void, and the heavens had no light. Okay? So at the destruction of the first heaven, the earth age, well, the heavens also had no light. It was completely destroyed. Now, we just finished the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, now John testifies that he says the heavens and this heaven and earth age, the one we at, he says he sees them roll up like a scroll and disappear with a great noise. So we won't miss it, right, when it's destroyed, when the second one is destroyed, right? Now, bearing that in mind, the first age, the heavens had no light. Listen to the first day. And God said, first day of creation in this heaven and earth age, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. All right, so what's the light? Because it's not photon, because we know photon. We talked about photon in our introduction to Genesis, right? Where we're not out some certain things. It has a speed limit. It's definable, 8,000 or 186,000 miles per second. Yeah, per second. Every second of existence, right? And there's light that's so far away that they hadn't had time to get here since it was all created. So we know we're not talking about photon. And the best way to understand what that is to go to John. Just John, or what I like to call just John. The Gospel of John chapter 1, right? Because we're going to run into our word again. All right. Now, we were talking about in the beginning, right? John chapter 1, verse 1, listen to what it says. In the beginning, right? That gives you time. When was it? In the beginning. That's like the very start of the beginning. First happened. Yeah, John. Okay. John's where we're at, yeah.
In the beginning of...
yeah, John chapter 1, verse 1 starts out in the beginning.
But I'm asking if it was in this heaven and earth.
No, he's talking about in the beginning. He's talking about the first heaven and earth age. In the beginning was the Word. All right, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is our word logos that we have from 2 Peter chapter 3, right? But here it's capitalized. And because it appears capitalized, and it isn't the first word in the sentence, we know that it has the article associated with it. And that means we're supposed to take the word word in this case and apply that it is a divine expression of God, that is Christ. Okay? And so you see the difference in the two words logos? Because when you look it up, you're going to get logos, but here it's in John, it was capitalized, right? This is what it says. The same was in the beginning with God. It's when he first created it all. The Word was with God already. Verse 3, all things were made by him. First age, this age, and without him was not anything that was made. Or that anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. All right, and the light shineth in darkness, and darkness comprehendeth it not. All right, we're getting into this very idea of the first day of creation. All right, and there was a man sent of God whose name was John. Now, this is not John the Revelator. This is John the Baptist. All right, the same came for witness, to bear witness of the light, capital L. All right, so we've had to change, like the W was part of the reference to Christ. Here we have the light with a capital L is also that same kind of a reference, right? That all men through him might believe. He was not the light, that's John the Baptist, but he was sent to bear witness of the light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. So here the light that we have is actually God then. God coming back onto the scene in the first day, let there be light. It was drawn from the first heaven and earth age, and now he's back on the scene in the second heaven and earth age and reestablishing things. All right, I want to run back over to Genesis real quick before we clear up exactly what was going on the first day. So go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 3 again. I'm sorry. I got one the wrong one here. Let me see. Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. There we go. Verse 4. And God saw, let's start over on 3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. Okay? That's what it says next. So the action that's going on is the division of the light from the darkness. It's not so much that the light is created, is that on this day there is a division that separates light from dark. let's
take
just
multiple ways. Good,
right.
evil.
We're going to build off of that idea, though, the rest of it, all right? So a division of the light from the dark, and the evening and the at verse 5, and God called the light day, like day star, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Okay, so what do we clearly have going on here? So what we have God reemerging on the scene on the first day. This is the first 1,000-year period, all right? Begins to do things again on the earth, to start to create, to build this age that culminates with the creation of man at the very end of it all right? Now, the first thing that's going on here isn't even on earth. All right? It's not even on the planet Earth. It's the separation of the night from the day. I want you to flip over back to the New Testament and go to Luke chapter 16. All right, and we're going to pick it up with, where are we going to pick it up here? We are going to pick it up in verse 19, all right, with a parable about Lazarus and the rich man, okay? Have you ever heard of the parable about Lazarus and the rich man? Okay, well, they're going to pull some things out of this parable that will explain what exactly would happen with the light and the darkness on the first day of creation, all right? And we'll finish this up after this in the book of Job, and it'll nail it down and tell exactly what we're talking about, all right? All right, so let's see what it says here about the parable about Lazarus, all right? Lazarus and the rich man. We're in Luke 16, verse 19. And there was a certain rich man which was clothed in purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. I mean, this purple and fine linen we're talking about, that's royalty. I mean, he's this big royal muckety duck dude, all right? And he fared scrumptiously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which laid at his gate full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked the sores. So Lazarus is a beggar that's trying to eat from this table. His only companionship is a dog, or dogs that actually lick his sores for comfort. That's all Lazarus has at this point. And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by angels to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lifted up his eyes, and being tormented, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. Now, the first thing I want you to warn you against is building the doctrine of hellfire right here. Right? Hell, he's separated. I know it uses the word hell here, but it's a Greek word that means, I think it's Hades, or let's just find out. Where was it? I lost where I was. Let me find. There we are, 23. There we go. I'll get right back on track. It's Hades. That's what I thought it was. Now, in the Greeks, they had a lot of different ideas about where people went. Remember, these were Greek speakers, all right? So he uses the term Hades here. But what he is in a place that he's in torment, but it's kind of a self-induced torment, all right? And the reason why I'm telling you, even though it says hell here, it doesn't mean like hellfire, like we talk about in the book of Revelation on Judgment Day. It's not the same thing, and you're going to see it explained exactly right here. And remember, we're in a parable, all right? So what you're getting is you're going to get some symbols, all right? And hell is one of those things. You're going to get some more water we're going to talk about. And I'll mention it right here just as we go, okay? And then let's see. And you can see, now there's something I want you to point out here is he can see Abraham. And he can see Lazarus. From where he's at, he can look. It says it's afar off, but it's not so far that he can't identify people. And you're going to find they can talk back and forth. Okay? So let's go on and see what it says. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus that he may dip his finger, or the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. All right? Which is verse 24. All right? So what's he asking for? All right? God is a consuming fire. All right? The book of Hebrews. The last verse, I think in that book, God is a consuming fire. So he's being judged. He's been judged. He's been separated. He's on one side, you have Lazarus with Abraham, and he's on another side, all right? And he's in hell. He wants Lazarus to dip his finger in water. Now, Christ is the water of life, right? So we're talking about the same Christian doctrine kind of a thing that here. It takes the water of life that quenches God's fire. And you get that, of course, through Christ. So that's really what the message is with the symbols that are being taught here, in the parable. And like I said, I don't want you to build a doctrine of hellfire here because that only occurs on Judgment Day. And then hell itself is covered up, not to be remembered by anyone. So like I said, I just don't want you to boil it. I just want you to see the symbols for exactly what they are. He needs the water of life to quench the fire because he's separated from God. And you can see what it says next. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, verse 25, but Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receiveth thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. It's just flipped. They died and he's went on, but now as Lazarus is the one that's in paradise and he's separated from it all. All right? Listen to what it says in verse 26. And besides all this, between us and you, there is a great gulf fixed, so that we which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us which would come from thence. Right? This great gulf is fixed. It's let's just look it all up. All right, great gulf of fixed. Great, I believe, is Magus. Besides, there's a great. Yeah, it's Magus. It means an exceedingly strong or great. All right. Gulf in this term is chasma. All right, and it means a gape or a yawn. So you got a space that they can't. And then this word fixed is where you really get the interesting thing. It's sterizo, and it means to set fast or to turn resolutely in a certain direction. All right, so look at the setup then we have here with Lazarus. He's on one side of this megas chasma, sterizo, this fixed area where you got a gaping yawn across it, but when you hit it, you have to turn resolutely in one way or the other. You can't go across it. He said, you that are over here can't come over here, and us that are here can't go over there. All right? When you look into this parable, you'll see then that the heaven that we have exists today, like where Lazarus and the rich man are, in that place where when you die, you'll appear before God and be sorted and be put on one side of that gulf or on the other, until the millennium at least. All right? That heaven and that earth was created on the first day of creation in this heaven and earth age, when the light was brought back, and then the light was divided from the darkness. This condition that we have in heaven right now was established then. Remember, the first heaven and earth age passed. This is a new one that we have now.
There was no division.
Yeah, there was none in the first one. Right. And it's in this one. In this one is where the light is divided from the darkness. All right. Let's go one more place. Job chapter 38 again. Because believe it or not, the last time we talked about this, we spent a lot of time in Job. First two times that we talked about this, we're going to continue in chapter 38 again, because it got just a little bit more to say about it. Job did anyway, or God did, I should say. All right, let's see, where are we going? We're going to go down to verse 18. All right, now remember, the book of Job and the book of Genesis, I always like to say this, we can determine emphatically, empirically, that they were in play at the same time. So if they heard the book of Genesis or read it, you can assume that they also heard the book of Job and read it. And the subject matter doesn't really change, which you're going to see here real quick. All right. Like I said, I want to pick it up in verse 18. Now remember, this is that chapter where God finally answers Job. This had that really hardcore stuff, where were you when I built the earth, when I formed it and stretched the line upon it and did all these things so you can just have this little happy place to live. He was telling him all that kind of big stuff. And this is continued in that chastisement, which is called the chastisement of Job. This is in that chapter. And it's down in verse 18. Listen to what he says. Hast thou perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare if thou knowest it all. All right. Listen to what it says here, 19. where is the way where the light dwelleth? And as for the darkness, where is the place thereof? It's talking about the same subject so we got for day one of creation. All right, exactly the same subject. All right, that thou shouldest take it to the bound thereof, and that thou shouldest know the paths to the house thereof. Just think about what he just told him. He said, you learned the path to both houses when you walked the earth, Job. And just what he's saying, you walk your path. If you walk your path, you can end up here, or you can walk your path and you can end up here. You can end up with the darkness, or you can end up with the light. But either way, it's that same place that it was divided on the first day of creation in this age. As the heavenly realm was reestablished in this age and then divided, and it was all worked out where to be born of the flesh and return and be put on one side of the gulf or the other. Now, some of these people that are on this other side of the gulf will get a shot in the millennium too, because some of them are there because they just never heard the truth for real. Right? That the millennium period squares all that stuff. Now, there are other people that are probably over there that heard something, and heard the truth and rejected it. It's not my job to determine who those are. That's God's business. Writes his book. He writes his names in it above my pay grade. But he'll determine those things. So a lot of our relatives and stuff that have passed, you people worry about them, but they really shouldn't. Because they're there in heaven. They've been sorted on one side or the other. The ones that are on the other side, they're not so happy, but they're not in torment. They're not being physically tormented, other than perhaps by themselves, saying, oh, I should listen. Just like the rich man was saying, well, just go back and tell my brothers. And Abraham tells him, no, your brothers had the prophets just like you did, is what he's telling him. That'll guide them, and they'll determine that path, like in Job. Which house do you go back to? Gets determined there.
Essentially, the devil made his decision to separate, and then God said, like, now I'm going to put you through a test. You can either be here or not. Like, who you want to be.
You talking about in the first earth age?
Yeah, just saying, like,
yes.
you can, like,
Now,
make that decision for
don't
yourself.
so much think about the devil. Don't think about the devil. Think about you.
Yeah.
It's not that the devil will never be born of the flesh. I know that people believe that the Antichrist, right? I know people believe that the Antichrist will be born of a woman, come out of Europe, and everything like that. And it's pretty much it's
Malarkey.
yeah, it's like tongue talking and things like that. It's just some stuff people talk. All right. The Antichrist, what it says in the book of Revelation, is kicked directly out of heaven, and he falls and lands right here on earth. All right, he comes here in his spiritual body. That's why you'll find that he refers to the days of Noah all the time. He says it's going to be just like it was in the days of Noah, right? We're going to get there eventually. We'll get through the days and work our way. Because if you don't understand all the way up to the days of Noah, you have no idea what's really going on with Noah.
Why it's
why it was so important, right? And that gets completely lost because people try to run right to Noah's ark and try to determine everything from that point. And if you don't know this backup, the information that leads up to it, that's not the whole story, right? You have to understand everything that's going on to understand what Noah's flood's really about. And don't worry, we're going to break every word of it down. You will understand without a doubt what it's about. I mean, anybody that studies with us too. If you ever want to know what does it really mean, what is it really talking about, well, you can determine that with the Bible itself. You can. You got to break it down.
It's fairly straightforward too. There's no.
It is, and there's not a lot of baloney stuff. Right. It's pretty straightforward.
It was a straightforward cause and reaction. That's it.
Now, listen to what it says right after this. He's asking him, about the separation of the days and light. One more verse in Job 21. Knowest thou it, because thou wast then born? All right. He's telling him right then. This is just like the rest of his chastisement. Where were you when I formed the earth? Where were you? Where were you when I separated the light from the dark on the first day of creation? Knowest thou? Because you was then born. And so were you. So was I. We all stood right there. When he formed the new heaven, we were already present and formed with him in this age. We weren't flesh, but we were still in our spiritual bodies from the first heaven and earth age. But when we come now, they're born of the flesh. Yeah, and like I said, I've said it before, and people listening, like, God had a lot of prophets he could have sent. He could have sent a lot of people. All right, he had Jeremiah and all them, and Moses, and all these characters that we studied and we learned about. But in the last days, who he sent was us. We're it. When you look at the people that will stand on the earth at the second advent, you're looking around, you're seeing it. If you ever want to know what the book of Revelation really looks like, open your door. Look outside. You live it every day. All right? Now, remember, this famine, because of this famine, we've talked about the famine in Amos chapter 8 before. It's not for bread and water, even though we lose 2/3 of the ships of this commerce we've talked about before.
The land provided no.
Right, but we still not. We're not, starvation is not our big worry in the last days. It's hearing the words of God. He said, I'll send the famine is of hearing the words of God. That's why it sounds foreign to people when you start talking about 3 heaven and earth ages. When you start talking about, well, Acts chapter 2 has nothing to do with what you see done in church.
No.
When you say these things, people are like, blah, 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 because they've never heard them before.
I've caught it to where when I tell people that Adam and Eve weren't the first
Yeah, that's right.
humans on earth,
They'll lose their gooch. They lose their mind.
Yes.
Tell them there's not an apple in the book of
Yeah,
Genesis.
there's no apple in the book. Of Genesis. Not an apple.
Literally, you'll have people lose their lunch over it. I mean,
Yes.
and you're going to find out as we go, everybody sticks this study out, they're going to find out exactly how much baloney gets passed around as Christian doctrine and exactly what's in the Bible. All right. So if you really want to know what the book says and what it's talking about, we're going to talk about that. All right. But if it's what your church says, or any of you are listening, if you get churchy with me, just click out. I don't care. I don't care about your church. I don't care about anybody's church. All right. But I do care about my book, and I do love my Father. And that's why I teach, is for that. We don't ask you for money. We just want you to listen.
We just want you to listen.
That's
Yeah,
it.
Be a part of us.
So if you got anybody that wants to, if you think anything we're doing will help anybody, bring them. You too.
Yeah.
It's open. And so
Hey,
bring
man,
them.
everybody
That's
got meat. What
yeah.
are you talking about?
Right. He tried. Yeah. I've never seen Roman he recruits people or tries to. It's hard though, because let's have a Bible study, and they're so used
To
to
it being the mundane.
they're so used to
Yeah.
let's color some pictures about a snake and some stuff like that, and they're not really
Be told how bad of a human
right.
we are, how bad our souls
Right. And when we get through all this first 8 chapters of this, we're going to go back to Exodus because we're getting into law. And law is, for me, that's the best thing I can do is teach you law. Because if you know the law, then you by yourself can stand in your own home and please God, and it doesn't make a tinker's piss what your preacher says about it, what your neighbor says. You will know what pleases God yourself, and you don't have to worry about that. It can just go flutter away or whatever it is to do. I don't really care. When I'm done, I'm gonna play with my little boys. I mean, I'm lucky. Yeah, I do. I'm lucky. I got 2 little boys, and the end of my life, But that should just about do it. So we get through one day. All right. So first day in the book of Genesis, first day of creation in this age, what we have is just heavens being reestablished. The light has returned. It was destroyed, or at least withdrawn. I'm not going to say destroyed, but at least, it went withdrawn from the scene, returned, has a plan. They put a plan together, and they begin planning this age out and then executing this age. From this point forward, we're going to start talking. Well, no, not the next one. The next day is another one of these. This day didn't even occur. Doesn't even occur on earth. First day of creation is the creation of the heaven. It's the heavenly realm. Hey, right. They're just still in the state of destruction, and we'll pick that up in the next verse. When we come back in verse 5, I think is where we actually are. But so the light, you have the establishment, the division of the light, everything's set up. The heavenly realm is set and ready to rock and roll for the second heaven and earth age.
Pumping out flesh
Bodies. It's ready to start. At the end of the creation period, we'll find out. Now, like I said, we're going to start after the next one. We won't do it, but we'll start depending on a large degree on archaeology to talk about what we're talking about pretty much from this point forward.
That's cool.
Yeah.
They're cool lessons coming up.
That is, yes, there's some really cool stuff that actually comes up next. But this next day, it's going to be another one of those. It happens on Earth, but it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the earth itself, and we'll cover what that is. I promise you. Join next week because you're gonna have fun. Next week is a fun one. I love teaching this next week. This the firmament lecture is to me is one of the funnest ones to teach because when it's done, it's all just right in your face.
And it's crazy how many flat earthers take the firmament and build a flat
Just,
earth theory.
hey, out of it. I know.
Ridiculous.
I know it is, and we're gonna find out what it is.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really have anything really to do with the earth.
No,
It's,
not at all.
but it does unfold on earth, and that's why it's included in the
Yeah,
next
well,
day.
at least can be seen.
Yeah, it's same to earth. Right. Yeah. But you said, I heard you say something after the first couple of times. You said this smart sci-fi. It was like like, well, get ready because next week really you'll get twisted sci-fi next week. It gets fun. It really is. But because what happens on the actual second and third day is really cool compared to what this
there's some
baloney
cool
gets taught.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, people will try to tell you, we're talking about atmosphere and things like this and air and stuff, but no, because it's been going on. We've had an atmosphere for hundreds of
destroyed
millions
the
of years.
atmosphere, never
So,
said
right, yeah, so that's not the things that it's talking about. It's already been here. See, and the reason why it gets confusing is because they go back to that first day and they try to take light and say photon. Right, and go, but where John starts with the lights way back in the beginning, and he's talking about a symbol, and of course it's God. And when he comes back, he divides light from the darkness. You've been good, you're over here. You've been bad, you're over here. And that's day one. It's like I said, and it doesn't even unfold on Earth. Yeah, right now, the Earth, as far as the timeline goes, the Earth's still in a state of destruction. But the heavens have been reestablished. Something from a scientific point I wanted to tell you about the creation. When we talk about events of the expansion, when it all began to expand, scientists often argue about things that occur over the span of 4 seconds. And they're talking about when does matter form, when did photons organize and things like this. And they argue and they build careers on things like this. And sometimes that the time spans that they're talking about are minuscule. It's 4 seconds. It's things that occur in milliseconds, like wormholes and things like that. Things like that. They're talking about it and things like that. And it's hard to get our little brains wrapped around them. But it's an amazing universe. We talked a little bit about, we talked about, okay, is it dimensional? Is that the way to do it? Or is it a multiverse? Or is there, how's it all put together? And my best answer, if we can come up with it, well, probably, and then some.
Yeah.
Because
there's no limits.
There's no limits, that's right.
Thought that can grasp the entire concept.
I was watching some of the stuff coming back from the JWST, and the things that you view out in the universe are the detail that we can see it with that telescope is just, it's stupid. You can see nebulas where light pressure from far stars grab the edge of a nebula and roll it back under and start to slow the expansion of the nebula down, over time. And when you look at these nebulas, you're talking about some of these structures that are in space. They're sometimes, hundreds of thousands of light years across. I mean, the universe is such an immense place, and it's so complicated. There's so many things that we've not even seen. I mean, our nearest star is 4 light years. You can fly at 186,000 miles per second for 4 years to get there. Now think about this. What have we taught? One day with the Lord is 1,000 years, 1,000 years is one day. How that 1,000 years, out of that one day, how long? It would be 4 years in a spiritual body. It would be like me driving to your house from here.
14 minutes.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, something like that.
Dude, yeah.
4 years. If 62.5 years is an hour and a half, then you're talking minutes in your spiritual body to get to our next star. So, and that's going to tie in with your sci-fi stuff for next week, or the week after that.
Like wormholes that your bodies will be able to traverse.
Bye, everybody. We're talking about science now.
You know what I mean? And